Everybody to the Career Pathways webinar. Today we will be talking about careers in the humanities and social sciences. We still have some people joining us, so we'll take a minute or two to allow everybody to join, and then we'll get started. So as people are joining us, I will begin by a brief introduction. My name is Dalila Omerbasic. I am the director of the Humanities and Social Sciences program at SoPA. And I'm also a professor of practice, so I teach courses in various topics in the liberal arts, but mainly focusing on gender, language and power, and also cultural practices in digital media settings. Today we're joined by our guest panelists, and I wanted to say thank you to our panelists for joining us and sharing their time as well as their perspectives. So I will let them introduce themselves quickly, and then we will get started. So first, Sandra, did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi. My name is Sandra Lindquist, and I'm currently the Vice President and CEO of the New Orleans Chamber. And I'll wait for the first question to go into further detail on that.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Jacqueline Thanh. I'm the Executive Director of the Denise American Youth Leadership Association of New Orleans. So we're an AAPI, Asian American Pacific Islander intersectional nonprofit that's based out in New Orleans East right now. Yeah, I can get into a bit of what we do then as well later on.
Sounds good. Thanks so much. And we also are expecting Kiana Wiggins to join us. It doesn't look like she's able to connect yet, but once she does, we'll allow her to introduce herself as well. So before we get started, I just wanted to kind of give an overview of what we're doing today. One of the biggest questions that I receive about the Humanities and Social Sciences programs is, what can I do with this? So it's a tricky question because there are no clear answers. You can't say, well, you know, you're majoring in humanities and you will do, you will be performing these specific tasks or jobs once you graduate. So the focus really of a liberal arts education is that it provides students with very critical skills that are useful in a wide range of careers. So these skills are applicable in business and in legal fields and in other professional settings like marketing and writing, nonprofit management. And so it's a really challenging question to answer because it really depends on what your interests are and what your ultimate goals are to better understand how you can apply these skills in a professional setting. So what we did today is to invite guest panelists from different career areas, different career fields, who all have a background in liberal arts. And they will share a little bit about their career paths and their journeys and talk a little bit about how liberal arts, how this liberal arts education has really helped them and supported them through a variety of careers. And I see that Ki has joined us. So before we begin with some questions, I will ask her to introduce herself, and then we'll begin. Hi, Qiana. So would you mind just introducing yourself really quickly before we jump into the questions for today?
Hi, my name is Kiana Wiggins. I go by Key professionally, and I say I'm a 2008 graduate of University College, which is now SoPA. But technically I graduated in 07, but I held off so I could walk with my fiance, who was an MBA graduate in 08. So we decided to do that. But currently I am a partnership specialist with the United States Census Bureau. And in that role, I encourage local governments. For me, my parishes are St. Tammany, Tangipahoa, St. Helena, and Washington Parish, to engage their constituents and their communities to take the 2020 census.
Awesome, thank you. And thanks for joining us today as well. So again, I wanted to say, thank you to all the participants today, and also thank you to all of the panelists. And I'm really excited about having this conversation and learning more about the different possibilities that that people can take in with the support of a liberal arts education. So the first question that we had for all the panelists is if you could share a little bit about your career journey, and also what you're currently doing, your current position, and also your broader work that you are doing right now. So maybe we can start with Sandra.
Sure. All right, as I said, my name is Sandra Lindquist. I'm the Vice President and COO of the New Orleans Chamber of Commerce. And the New Orleans Chamber is a nonprofit 501c6 membership organization. So most of our members are businesses that join, and the reason that they join is mainly to get networking assistance and educational assistance to help grow their business. But I actually started my career way back. I'm going to show my age here, but in 1992, I moved to New Orleans from Austin, Texas, where I got my undergraduate degree from the University of Texas in Austin. And my background was actually business. It was international business focused on Latin American affairs. So my first job was working for JEDCO, which is the Jefferson Parish Economic Development Commission. And back then I didn't know what the heck economic development meant. And it is kind of a wide variety of different things. But I started there because they actually had an office in Mérida, Mexico. And so I was hired as an admin assistant to just help in that department. But within like 3 months of working, and bear in mind, I'm like a 22-year-old little girl with very little work experience other than waiting tables through college. One of the managers of the other divisions of JEDCO quit. And so our CEO threw me into this other department that I knew nothing about. And it happened to be something incredibly technical and difficult. It was working with tax incentives for Louisiana businesses, and specifically Jefferson Parish businesses. And these are all state of Louisiana tax incentive programs. And so my CEO just threw me in there and gave me these big binders like this with all the legal content for the tax incentive programs. And the phone is ringing off the hook, and I'm just answering the phone going, yep, okay, let me write that down. And then I'll research that and I'll call you back. And I'd be frantically going through the binders, so it was this huge learning curve. But saying all that, it started my now almost 30-year career in economic development. And so basically I stayed at JEDCO for the next 5 years and kind of grew in that department, and then ultimately winded up becoming the economic development director of the Tangipahoa Parish Economic Development Foundation. And it was around that time I started my master's degree at Tulane, which I'll explain a little bit further in the next question that we are posed. But from there, I did economic development for quite a few years, and then I moved into the entrepreneurship side of economic development, and I worked for a major nonprofit in helping them to determine how to create revenue out of mission-related programs and services. And then that turned me into working for the Idea Village, which is a really well-known organization now, but back before Katrina, when I worked there, we were still trying to explain to people what entrepreneurship meant, and even like how to spell entrepreneurship, because like it was like a brand new word for everybody. And then after that, Katrina happened, and I winded up helping FEMA write business plans for small businesses, and that was kind of part-time, but that kind of landed me into my Chamber of Commerce experience, because Chamber and economic development do kind of go hand in hand. But I started working on the North Shore for the St. Tammany Parish Chamber of Commerce, and because it was a girlfriend of mine who needed help, and she's the CEO over there, and she's still the CEO. But from there, I winded up working with her for a couple of years, and then Orleans Parish was resurrecting their Chamber of Commerce. And around that same time, I got married, moved into my husband's house here on the South Shore in New Orleans. And the CEO of the New Orleans Chamber of Commerce was at the time consulting to try and figure out what to do with the New Orleans Chamber. And so he invited me to come over and be the vice president, and he officially became the CEO. And this is like going on 10 years now, but that's when we pretty much have started the revitalization of the New Orleans Chamber of Commerce. And we've been able to grow the chamber from, when I came on board, I believe we had like 500 members. Now we have over 1,400 members. Our revenue has tripled since the time I came on board. And then we now actually have a full-time staff and are, you know, able to offer incentives to our staff and the normalness of a real business. So that's how I came to be where I am today.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for sharing. Jackie, would you mind sharing a little bit about your experience and what you're currently doing?
Yeah, thank you so much, first of all, for making the time to discuss the importance of liberal arts, I think. I'm a through and through liberal arts kid, and I think a lot of times when I'm talking to younger folks, because I work with a lot of people who are like in and out of school and kind of like younger kids in the community who have kind of dropped in and out of vocations, I think people think it's automatically this idea that it's a liberal, you know, that's a liberal education. But doing the work that I do now, I had an English undergraduate degree from Berkeley. So my experience and my journey has really been centered around redefining what it means to critically think about the complexities of the realities that we face as a community and as a society. So right now I work as the executive director of VAYLA New Orleans. We're based out in the East. And we champion race, gender, and health equity with the AAPI lens. We serve as a pivotal resource hub and community incubator. We try to center our work around environmental and reproductive justice rights. But a lot of our work is the idea of how we build critical leadership in our community. So to be very upfront, I'm first generation. So my parents were refugees. And I think being a woman of color and somebody who holds multiple cultural identities, multiple languages, and kind of come from that world, education, especially higher education, was not always pushed in my particular scenario. So I think, and then furthermore, kind of seeking a liberal arts education, it becomes something even harder to define and translate, right? It's like, oh, I'm gonna go major in English. They're like, what, you speak English? Like, what are you talking about? But I think what it really gave me was a critical way of exploring many truths that exist in our reality. And I think in our world and reality now, it's really allowed me to unpack and research how different people approach problems, right, across disciplines, and how that converges into a solution. And I think that's the possibility that an English degree has given me access to. So I think when it comes down to the nitty gritty, I started working when I was 14, you know, from working at a jazz club to, you know, doing different things in retail and trying to make ends meet as a first generation kid. A lot of my work has been balancing, you know, what pays versus what sustains your soul. So I think that's what the liberal arts degree balance and equilibrium that everybody seeks is, right? I think everybody, like, community-centered and collective consciousness sounds great and very fulfilling, but it doesn't always pay the bills. So I think finding a medium of what, you know, that Venn diagram is, like what overlaps and what brings you alignment and success and kind of happiness in a career has been really important to me. So I went on to get my master's in social work from the University of Chicago, and a lot of my time there centered on the intersections of human rights and clinical trauma-informed work. And through that, I've kind of spent my career diving in and out of the micro and macros of trauma-informed survivor advocacy. And so that, I think, like having frontline work and having the capacity to talk to people and think about people's lives and narratives critically and accept narrative plenitude in my life through a liberal arts degree has kind of allotted me the capacity to redefine what leadership looks like and develop programs and be now in an executive position. So I think it's having growth and understanding that it's not always linear, but also building up a tolerance for ambiguity in an ever-changing world, clearly. So.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I think that's such an important point, is this kind of the skills that I mentioned earlier that a liberal arts education gives us includes this adaptability and this ability to be flexible and navigate different environments. So I think that's a great point. And Ki, would you like to share a little bit about your experiences and what you're doing right now as well?
Sure. So I'm a millennial, a borderline millennial, I should say. So as we know, millennials are old. They're no longer high school students. And so my mother taught, and I come from a large family, it's 6 of us, and she taught us, when you wake up in the morning, do you get to go to work, or do you gotta go to work? And so that's kind of the philosophy that I live with. And so I graduated from Dillard University, and I had aspirations of being a broadcast journalist. And then while I was at Dillard, I said, well, let me diversify my thought process. And my mentee was the director of communications for former mayor Mark Morial. And they offered me an internship to work with Mark in his first term as mayor of New Orleans. And that was an interesting experience. And I said, well, you know, I don't think I want to do politics. Because it's truly not what you see at the press conference when you're working in a Department of Communications. And so I chose to pursue my goal of being on the other side of the camera by becoming the reporter. But in all reality, bias unfortunately exists, and I don't have the right color or the right look to make it in television and the way I wanted to make it in television. And so that didn't deter me. And so the furthest I got in that television dream is that I was an associate director, and for WDSU News Channel 6. Sounds fancy. What it really was, I was the floor director. And so, you know, I got to work with some great people, Norman Robinson and Chris Fairbairn and Margaret Orr. And while I was at WDSU News Channel 6, the Coca-Cola company had just came off a discrimination lawsuit. And so back in the early 2000s, they were sued by their Black and other people of color employees for racial discrimination. And so the Coca-Cola company was, they had to seek out a diversified employee base. And so they sought me out at Channel 6, and they found out that I worked for Mark Morial. And so I understood how a television studio worked and how journalists thought and how a news editor decided what was the story of the day. And I also understood how to craft that messaging from my experience with the city of New Orleans. And so I was, you know, I was recruited, and I went through a long interviewing process, and Coca-Cola hired me. And plus I was Black, so that I'm not remiss. That's why they hired me. I was qualified and I was Black. So it kind of checked the box, you know, for them to achieve this goal of diversification. I think some people don't want to talk about the realities of it. It's that, you know, when we are seeking diverse people, you are being sought after for your race, gender, or creed, but you must be qualified to do it. And so I did have the qualifications to back me up. And while I was at Coke, Chevron saw the great work I was doing at Coke, and Chevron recruited me from Coke as well. And so I created this kind of public affairs career. But when I was at Coke, I realized that I needed more skill sets to help me to persuade. And so that's where my Master's of Liberal Arts at Tulane comes in. So I started the program while I was at the Coca-Cola Company. And so the track that I went was rhetoric. And so I needed the power of words to help persuade people the way I wanted them to think. And that's where Tulane came in. And that's where they taught me how to use image, how to use language, how to use body, how to use anything to persuade. So it was the power of discourse. And so I'm forever grateful for that, because you know, I think I'm really good at it. So while I was at Coke, we were being pressured, I should say, for causing obesity. And so I used my skill set and the skills that I learned from Tulane to convince people that, oh, it's not the Coca-Cola, it's your choice. And Coca-Cola is not just the Coke company. We're a brand of choices, which is why you have Minute Maid, you know, which is why you have Dasani water. So Dasani water was launched while I was at Coca-Cola. And so it was all about trying to persuade people that it's not just about the soft drink Coca-Cola. You have a choice. You have a choice of beverages you can drink, but Coca-Cola still gets paid. And so my particular job was to convince schools not to take away the vending machines. So California had banned all vending machines from the schools, which is a big moneymaker. And so we needed to keep the vending machines in school. But how do we do that? Well, we just persuade people that they have a beverage of choice. And you can have CSDs, which means carbonated soft drinks, or non-CSDs, which would be Minute Maid juices. At the time, we owned out VAYLA. So it was all of these beverage choices. And so from there, I developed a career in public affairs that is all about persuading. So when I went to Chevron, the persuasion was that to convince people that oil companies, which is true, and I never do anything that I ethically would go against. So oil companies are not here to just rape the land of all oil. Oil employees, we all work here, we all love here, we love South Louisiana. We have a commitment to make the environment better, right? And so that was my job at Chevron. We have a commitment here to ensure that we follow the best safe practices so people can have sustainable energy. And from Chevron, I sought out Shell Oil because I was pregnant, and Chevron was on the North Shore, and I did not want to cross the causeway pregnant every day. So I sought out Shell Oil so I can be closer to my house, which I live in New Orleans. And that's how I became at Shell. And from Shell, I took the package when oil tanked to about $30 a barrel back in, it started in 2014. So, and then I became a stay-at-home mom. And that's another experience. And then the 2020 census came up. So I'm gonna encourage everybody, take the census. Tell everybody, take the census, please take the census. The 2020 census came up, and the Department of Commerce recruited me out to help persuade people why the census is important, why we need the census, and why people should take it. And so that's where I am in my life.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And also, I just wanted to highlight what you've mentioned about kind of being strategic about your liberal arts education as well, is, you know, knowing that there's certain aspects or certain skills that you could gain by pursuing a particular area of study. So that was a really nice example of kind of how we can be strategic in making our educational choices as well. So our next question is more specifically about, so I know you talked a little bit about your liberal arts education, but more specifically about what have you found to be the most valuable aspect of your liberal arts background? And how has it impacted you professionally? So where do you see this connection between your liberal arts background and also what you've done in your career? So maybe we can start again with Sandra, and then ask Jackie and Key to answer the same question.
Okay, thank you, Dalila. And Dalila, you said it earlier, it's that wide range of skills with the Masters of Liberal Arts that I feel like I obtained. But I'll be honest with you all, I wanted to go back to get my master's when I was about 25 years old. And my father is a graduate of Tulane, and he got his undergrad and his graduate degree at Tulane, and he had gotten his MBA. So I completely planned on getting my MBA as well and following in his footsteps. But as I started walking down the path of getting my MBA, and I believe I completed about a year and a half of the MBA program, I somehow, and I don't even remember how I came across the MLA program, the Masters of Liberal Arts. But as I started delving into it, because I was finding that the MBA was not being as flexible with my work schedule, because I traveled a lot at that time through my job, and I was getting my professional MBA. So I was working full time and going to school at night. And so someone had told me about the MLA program, and I wound up researching it and then switching to the MLA. And to the chagrin of my father. I remember my father was livid. He was like, you have to get your MBA. It's the MBAs all the way. And I'll tell you now, he knows it was the best decision I've ever made. And he will admit it to me, 20 years later, that he's so proud that I stuck to my guns and I wound up getting my Master's of Liberal Arts, because it really has given me a wide range of skills, as you mentioned earlier. And same what Key was saying, it's the ability to debate, the ability to be diplomatic, the ability to listen and know how to negotiate, public speaking. I mean, I learned that in it. Collaboration. I mean, a lot of like really, really valuable skills I learned that I would not have gotten if I did not move to the MLA. And, my undergrad was business. And here I was getting my MBA, which is just another economic class, another macroeconomic, microeconomic, accounting. It was the same stuff that I was learning, but with the MLA, I learned a bunch of things I never learned before. I took my first philosophy class, and I didn't realize how important philosophy is. I mean, it just really expanded my world and my horizons. And I really absolutely feel like it has made me a better person in my job, as well as a person itself. And another part that had seemed so enticing to me to move to the MLA is that I could actually write a thesis in my MLA program. And at the time, I was working for Tangipahoa Economic Development Foundation, and I was able to incorporate my thesis into something that was important at my job. So my thesis was actually the economic development plan for the parish of Tangipahoa, which they still have in existence today as a blueprint that they've moved on and like augmented. But Tangipahoa Parish has no zoning, and so we were able to use this as a plan to recruit new businesses to Tangipahoa Parish and help retain the existing business base. So it ended up being like a really wonderful twofold plus for me. And even though it took me 5 years to graduate, because I was working at night and wound up switching from the MBA to MLA, it still was the best thing I've ever done. And I'm really proud to say that I'm a graduate of Tulane's MLA program.
Thanks so much for sharing your experience. And I've mentioned to Sandra before, at least, that I've kind of had a similar experience, in that I also received my undergraduate degree in business, and it was just very structured and very business oriented. And I had, maybe a handful of humanities and social sciences courses. And after I graduated, I just felt like I needed more. So I ended up taking my first art history class, for example. So I kind of had that experience like, wow, this is amazing. And then also so important in the way that it helps you just view images and view all different symbols around this that are presented in a different way. So it is it is kind of a nice balance, I think, to a business education that I've also experienced. Jackie, I know you talked a bit about the way that your English degree has shaped your professional experiences, but I wanted to see if you had anything else that you wanted to add, particularly kind of what would you say is the most valuable aspect of that education, and how has it impacted your professional experiences?
Well, I think like we're all kind of talking about exposure in a certain way, right? I think my English degree gave me an exposure to worlds and experiences that I would otherwise never, it's just, you're incapable to have in one lifetime. And I think from my English degree to my master's in social work, that was a full-on commitment to liberal arts when you're going to go get a master's in social work degree. And I couldn't pick between doing clinical social work and administrative work either, or policy work. So I did all of it. So I did a global health and administration certification, and I did a international social policy certification while doing all of that and doing clinicals. And I think back on how all of it, from my English degree, from art philosophy to, indigenous literature to poetry, and, finding meaning in life is nothing to cough at. And I think while developing hard skills to envision and manage a nonprofit or a business, I can't think of doing that without having read and been exposed to all the lives that I just won't have the opportunity to live, right? And I think it's how we cultivate solutions. It's how we cultivate a fulfilling and kind of dynamic life, and just build a future where everybody feels like there's a collective investment in it. So.
Thank you. Yeah, it's this breadth of knowledge, I think, that we're all kind of addressing. And I think that was a really good point about saying how it gives us different perspectives into things that we might not normally be able to experience. And what about you, Ki? Do you have any additional things that you wanted to share about the way that liberal arts is?
So what I love about my liberal arts degree is that it taught me the how. And so deductive reasoning is very important, especially in my kind of work. So as a journalist, as a trained journalist, I can read a room. I can pick up on body language and figure out how to pose the question differently. But as a trained rhetorician, I can pick up on your body language, and I can understand how you're coming to that perspective. And it gives you an openness of your thought. So I can pick up any subject, right? I can have any conversation with anyone, which is why I can switch from a beverage industry to oil and gas to government, because it is a how, it is a thought process on how you think and why you think and what makes you think. And I think that's thinking liberally does that for you. It allows you to understand all aspects of life and to coalesce it into a big ball and let it explode into all of these thoughts. But what Tulane does, it helped you to manage them and orchestrate them how you want them to sound. And that's basically what I do. I manipulate. I'm not going to lie about that. I truly manipulate. And I try really hard to manipulate for the good of the universe, right? So I don't want it ever to come back that I was the manipulator of evil. And so, but that's what I do. And when I'm manipulating, how are you manipulating thought process? Are you manipulating with truth? And so that's an important subject today, where fake news is a thing now, or a saying. But you have to be truthful. And so, like Sandra said, the philosophy of it, the philosophy of digging into thought process and understanding how and why people think the way they do, and how do I contribute to that thought process to make the world better. So it is self-fulfilling in a way that everybody is manipulated. So when you have a commercial, you are manipulated. Your TV show, you are manipulated. How are you manipulating that for the good? And I will give credit to one of my professors at Tulane. His was Dr. Patton, and he's long gone. but he was there, and he used to always ask us, you know, are you using your rhetoric, or are you just, you know, being a sophist? You know, so are you just being wise just to say you're wise and not changing anything? And I would say that's with Tulane. They push you. It pushed me to go further than me. To, you know, I know this helps me. How will it help the next person? How will I use my position to engage youth, to engage community, to make change? And that's what I use my liberal arts degree for. So just like the census, I want you to take the census, but why? People have to understand the why. Why do you need to take the census? And then I give them all the reasons why you should and need to take a census, because you have the power, right? And so that's with anything, you have the power. How do you transfer that power to the person? Using the right language, not being condescending, not placating, but truthfully giving them what they need to move forward. And that's what I think, I love that about Tulane. And then just FYI, if you ever want to work for the government, if you have a master's degree, the GS level will go higher, and it depends on what school you go to, and it's Tulane University. So coming into the government, I am ranked at a high GS level because of my master's degree. And it aids in money. You know, when I negotiated my role with Chevron, having a master's degree from Tulane University, that adds to the bottom line. As Jackie was saying, you know, you still have to pay the bills. And so you can parlay that. There are ways you can parlay that when you're negotiating, that I have this skill set from this university that can assist you. As Sandra was saying, they're still using her template, right? They're still using her thesis. I can make that happen for you. And this is why I deserve that, because of this is the education that I received to give you for future growth, even when I'm not there anymore.
That's great. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think that you raised so many important points about not only understanding the world around us better and being able to critically evaluate what's happening, but also understanding our relationships and building our relationships, and then making an impact. So using our education to actually make an impact on the world around us in the way that we hope that that, you know, it would look. So you briefly mentioned one of your mentors. So our next question is about mentorship, and if you could just share a little bit about the importance of mentorship in your professional career, either through mentorship that you've received, or in any ways that you you serve as a mentor to other young professionals. Maybe we'll start with Sandra again. I'll kind of keep the same same pattern.
Okay. So I'm a firm believer in mentorship, whether you're a mentor or a mentee. And as a 50-year-old woman, I still have mentors in the community. And, you know, it can vary. Your mentorship can be varied in whatever way is best for you. So like in my 20s and 30s, mentorship, the word wasn't really used as much as it is now. And I didn't find in my 20s and early 30s that women collaborated as well as they do now. So it's just kind of like more of a different world. So back then I had mentors who didn't even know that they were my mentors. Like it was just different people in the community, whether it's business or personal, that I watched what they do and like really watched the steps that they took, the words that they used, how they handled situations. Whether if I was in a board meeting, like I was a part of the New Orleans Chamber board back when it was the old Chamber of Commerce, when frankly it was a good old boy board. You know, it was a lot of white men who are making decisions. And at the time I was a 26-year-old little girl, basically, you know, I mean, that's how they looked at me, even though I was the executive director of Tangible Ohio Economic Development. But I didn't say a word in the board meeting because I knew that they had already made decisions before the board meeting even started. And so what was the point in saying anything? But at the time there was this one gentleman who was the CEO of one of the big hospitals here. And he wasn't from here, but he was well respected since he was the CEO. He became my mentor because at the board meeting, you know, decisions were being made and we were supposed to vote on it. And of course, everybody was going to vote yay because you didn't want to rock the boat. And you know, things were just different way back then. But he would always raise his hand right before the vote was cast. And he'd go, you know, I was just wondering, did you think about it from this perspective and this? And the people in the room would get all like flustered and hot because they thought they were being challenged. But he was just making it known that he knew that what was going on, and he just wanted to voice it to all of us. And so I found myself always sitting next to him every month for the board meeting so I could learn from him. And he actually became an official mentor where we went to lunch on a regular basis so I could talk to him about different things. But a lot of my other mentors were just women and men in the community that I would follow. And also, I just wanted to point out that some of my mentors were people who I did not like the way they were doing things. So that's who I did not want to be. So there's two perspectives on this. You know, you can have people that you want to emulate and be like, but there's also the things that you got to learn from and say, I don't want to be that. And then as my career has gone on, I've become more of a mentor, and like currently I have a couple of the mentees. Some I talk to on a regular basis. You know, if they need me, they can email, text me, call me, what have you. And then there's others where I meet with them on a regular basis for coffee or lunch, and we just talk about different things that they want to talk about. So I just wanted to express the flexibility of a mentorship, that it could be anything you want it to be. You don't have to say, you know, Amy, can you be my mentor? It doesn't have to be that set and strict. It can be any way you want it, just as long as you're learning from other people and you're giving information to other people.
That's great, thank you. And I think that's such an important perspective too, is, you know, we're always learning from people around us, and sometimes it's learning things that we don't want to do. And I think there's a lot to be gained from that as well. Jackie, did you have any pointers or information that you like to share on mentorship?
I'm in my early 30s, and I think I started my career very early in a lot of different fields, but I've always like kind of stayed connected to certain folks. Being first generation, I think a lot of children like myself have to learn an image of Black. So if there's nobody who looks like you that's doing what you want to be doing, then what does that look like, right? Like, I don't know a single other, well, I don't think I can think of as a kid if I ever knew an Asian American therapist or social worker or somebody who was even kind of made in my likeness that was interested in doing similar work. But I think it's finding the capacity to nurture yourself and understand there are no perfect mentors. And also thinking about, as you're progressing and journeying, you know, in your academic or professional endeavors, what it looks like for you to be a good mentor, what it looks like for you to kind of lift as you grow. And my relationships with mentors, like, they come from all backgrounds, all ages, and, you know, all industries. And they're people who may have nothing in common with you, but are very much invested in your success. And I feel like that's something that we aren't like really taught to believe in, you know, like, oh, why does this person care? But I think people like to see people like win. People like to see people who are authentic and passionate about their work, be it working at the Chamber of Commerce or Census or community organization, that are really passionate about what they live their life doing. And I think that's how you find great mentors, and that's how you become a great mentor. It's just cultivating a sense of presence in somebody else's lives and really being invested in their success in that way. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jackie. And then Qiana, did you want to share any examples of mentorship and how it impacted you professionally?
Sure. So I guess I would be considered the harsh mentor because I'm going to tell you the truth, because that's how I was mentored. And so, like Sandra said, when I came up in Coca-Cola was a good old boys club. And so my boss at the time, who is a wonderful man, but he did stuff that I was thinking, I am never going to do this. And he truly was mentoring me. He was like, okay, and this is what you have to do. And this is what, teach me these things. And I said, gosh, I'm never gonna do that. I'm never gonna do these things. And so when I was in television, Andre Trevine was when WGNO decided to have a news station again, they picked Andre Trevine, who's an old New Orleans anchor. And so, and she's passed, but she was the person they picked. And I worked under her, and she kind of remained my mentor, but she was never the nice mentor. Like, she was nice to me, but she never told me stuff I wanted to hear. She would always tell me things like, what you wrote was garbage. This is awful, And so she was kind of that tough love mentor. And she would kind of encourage me to be better with that tough love. And when I was working at Channel 6, and she found out, and so she was like, so you still floor directing and you have a degree, you need to quit. This is not for you. Clearly, you may love it. Broadcast journalism does not love you. And so, that hurt my feelings. And I was so hurt and mad at her and for telling me that. And so she's like, you need to get out of it. This is not working for you. And I know you're good, but this is just not the career for you. And I'm so angry with her. And the next week, the Coca-Cola company called me. And so it was almost like sometimes your mentor is pushing you in a direction where you really should be going, even though you may not think that's where you want to go. And you have to listen to that type of mentor, that they are truly preparing you for something you really can't see. And so had not she had that conversation with me, I would have totally ignored Coca-Cola, right? And I wouldn't have been on this fabulous journey in public affairs. And so I tend to tell my mentees the truth. So if you're good, you're good. If you're lacking in this area, you're lacking in this area. You need to pick it up. These are the steps. This is what I think you need to do to enhance where you lack, or enhance where you're good, so you can grow. And so I look for that mentor. I want a mentor to really encourage me, to push me to my next level. And so that's what I do with my mentees. I'm going to push you in that next level. I had one mentee when I was at Shell. He just was really trying to go international, but he didn't want to learn a foreign language. He didn't really want to stay long. He wanted to stay for like a year, and he only wanted to work in this country. I was like, dude, that's not going international. You don't want to go international. You just want the extra pay that comes with going international. And I was right. And so after he was like, I thought about it, and I just really don't want to leave the Gulf of Mexico. That's what they call the, the oil area. I really did just kind of wanted the extra pay. And I was like, well, and so when he met with his manager told him, he was like, nothing what you're checking on this box is indicating for me to sponsor you internationally. So sometimes you need to tell people the truth so they can find their truth and understand how my career, my life will be successful if I listen. So I tend to not be the nice mentor. And they tell me that, oh, Ki, you're so not nice. And I said, but I'm truthful. and they love me for it. And I love everybody who came into my life that gave me the truth. And I did have nice mentors, but I respect and honor the ones who told me the truth much more than I did the nice ones, because they were the ones who pushed me to my next level.
Thank you so much. And that's such an important point, I think, that you made. And I think also Jackie was speaking to this idea of having people around us who want us to succeed. So, they might do this in different ways, whether it's, and often it is by telling you the truth and telling you things that you might not want to hear. But then also, as Sandra was mentioning too, by modeling things and actions that we can then learn from as well. So I wanted to say thank you for all of your thoughtful answers. I think it was really wonderful to hear the different perspectives, and at the same time, there are also so many similarities and commonalities between the shared experiences. And I also wanted to invite our participants to, if you have any questions, you can enter them in the chat right now. While we do that, I will, while the questions might be coming in, I will just talk briefly about the programming at SoPA in Humanities and Social Sciences, as I know we have some prospective students here. So we have 2 undergraduate programs. We have a Bachelor of Arts in Humanities and a BA in Social Sciences. Our humanities program allows students to engage in the interdisciplinary study of complementary fields. These include English literature, religious studies, linguistics, music, visual and performing arts, as well as philosophy, and also history. And then our social sciences undergraduate degree allows students to explore the cultural, economic, political, historical contexts of societies, and the courses we have are available in anthropology, geography, Latin American studies, sociology, political science, and other related fields as well. And then at the graduate level, we have the Masters of Liberal Arts, and this program really allows students to bring these different perspectives in the liberal arts and reflect on various perspectives on the human experience from a variety of academic fields. For anybody that's interested in learning more, we will have a webinar on Tuesday, July 21st at 12 o'clock. So you may join us then and receive more information on these programs and also ask any questions that you might have. I don't see any questions at this point. So I just wanted to take a moment and thank everybody again, especially thank our panelists for sharing their time with us today and also talking about your journeys and your professional experiences, but also how your academic journey has been interconnected with your professional life as well. And then also I wanted to thank the participants for joining us. And if you have any questions that come up for you that you weren't able to ask, you are welcome to contact us. You will see the general contact information for SoPA on your screen. But if you want to contact me directly, my email is delila@tulane.edu, so delila@Tulane. And I'd be happy to continue the conversation with you if you have any additional questions. Thanks, Anne.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. It was a pleasure talking with everybody.
It was. And I just want to add that I love telling people that my husband and I are Tulane graduates. So that's fun at parties when we used to party. It's fun, and you know, it's an honor, and I love it. I love being a part of the program, and I love still being connected to the university. And SoPA does a good job at making sure the graduates are secured and connected throughout their careers.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. And we love our students and our graduates as well. And I really, I mean, I'm obviously biased, but I really believe that it's a special program at Tulane, and that really allows people to just explore such a broad range of their own interests, but also different academic perspectives. So it's a pleasure to stay connected with graduates and hear such positive feedback, even years after you leave. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, everyone.